Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another afternoon of conversations about digital. So it's hard to believe, but I'm not sure if you noticed, it's our 10th conversation in the Truelogic DX series. And we've had the privilege of being joined here by some people I really highly respect. It's been a learning experience for me personally. I hope it has been for you too. And for those of you that missed some of the segments, I want to remind you that we have Truelogic DX on the Truelogic webpage, in Facebook, on YouTube. So we place it wherever you can have access to it. As always, we drive the conversations to bring the best the industry has to offer, so that you have actionable takeaways. And that's sort of like wordplay given this conversation, but so that you can have actionable takeaways in terms of strategies, tactics, marketings, and just business savvy altogether. I've been very privileged to be joined by you guys over the past few months. And again, if you missed any of the conversations, just Google Truelogic DX and you'll find the videos on both YouTube and Facebook. Uh, like the previous conversation, I'm going to pretend you don't know who I'm going to talk to, but I'm sure you've seen the marketing and you've seen the messaging and whatnot. But while I am excited to have a conversation with our guest, I do want you guys to treat this as a conversation that you are a part of. So please throw your questions in the chat box as we go through the conversations. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship, food, and digital. Not necessarily always in that order, but mostly in that order. Uh, so I think the man that we're talking to today is a man of many hats. He's been many things over the years. He's definitely a household name. I am not very celebrity savvy, but when I have name recognition of somebody, I think they're that's really household. So won't you join us for hopefully another hour of meaningful conversation? I'm Bernard. I'm hosting us today, and let's all give as warm as we can a digital welcome to Mr. RJ Ledesma. RJ, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Hi, Bernard. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks again to everybody listening here right now on Truelogic DX, hoping to answer some of the questions of aspiring entrepreneurs and also entrepreneurs like myself who are struggling or have the challenge to pivot in the new normal. I wouldn't count myself as an expert, but rather as somebody who is undergoing the challenges. And what I just want to do is maybe share with you my own experiences. You might learn from them. I might learn from you. So very happy to please ask you to put in your questions in the chat box. So later on, Bernard and I can answer them later on. And before everything else, if you do appreciate what me and Bernard have to say over here on the podcast, may I please invite you to please tag me and Bernard. You can tag me online, RJ Ledesma, on Instagram, Twitter, on Facebook. And you can also follow me there. At the same time, you can visit my website, www.rjledesma.com, or you can also follow my podcast, the RJ Ledesma podcast, and also follow me on Spotify and on Facebook Live.
Yeah, I strongly encourage you guys visit his Facebook page and the podcast. It's if anything, it is highly entertaining, right? It's my kind of entertainment, and I think you've done a great job so far putting all of your media out there. Uh, Definitely very entrepreneuring, which is where I want to start our conversation, RJ. How early did you start? Like, how early did you start going into entrepreneurship? Has it been entrepreneurship for you since day one?
Well, actually, I began because my dad was an entrepreneur. So we were really raised in an entrepreneurial environment.
Right.
My dad's been in several businesses, and it more often than not, he would involve us, the children, in his entrepreneurial endeavors, whether forced child labor, technically, diba, you work for the family business, or you at the same time, or you invest in the business there as well, because
Right.
from he did video rentals to prawn farming, to encyclopedia selling. I mean, so many different businesses. And my dad they were very, very, very well known for a video rental shop called Sonic's Video Services, which was like very big in the 80s and the early 90s. So, that what I gained from my dad from those experiences was not so much, it was the idea of, you love to create businesses, to create opportunities. And that's really where that sort of framework for me came from. So I naturally graduated into it when I got a bit older. And I sort of followed the same career path that he did. He worked for corporate for a bit just to get some corporate training, did some graduate school. And then after that one, he struck it out on his own. And similar for me, I followed the same career path, especially for entrepreneurship. And I guess, the difference here is that because of, this new startup world, startup mentality, I've had a chance to refine my own sort of entrepreneurial methodology, but borrowing from the past, but understanding where we have to go in the future.
But how did you not get trapped into like the boss's son syndrome? I have some friends who are guilty of this, where their parents are entrepreneuring, and they're sort of happy to be the parent's employee. And that's not necessarily entrepreneurship. How did you not
because I think
that
my dad gave me the opportunity to say, you can work for me, or you can choose to work for yourself. I mean, that was really the option. And even when I was working for him for a bit, it was not always so much for him to say, oh, you got to stay here. If I was looking into an entrepreneurial endeavor, he would say, okay, try it out. In fact, I was working for my dad for a few years until Mercato came along. And even when I was working for my dad, I had a few of my own entrepreneurial ventures as well. And I need to dispel the notion that entrepreneurship means that it requires you to put in a lot of money, right? Or it's not always about capital. I mean, for me, my biggest capital is laway, diba? Because I'm a host, and you can consider me as a host, as being part of my entrepreneurship skill set, right? But on top of that one, one of the big things that many entrepreneurs say is that your network is your net worth. And over the years, being a host, has helped me. I've hosted for business, media, lifestyle. I've accumulated over the years different contacts from across different industries. So I mean, when you're able to leverage and use these networks and to make connections in your mind as you create businesses in your mind, that's being entrepreneurial as well. So I used to work for my dad, and eventually this entrepreneurial opportunity to do business for myself cropped up, and it just continued from there.
How come you didn't fall in love with corporate? And then there are people that are like that, right? Where they gain some initial experience, they go into corporate with a mindset of wanting to put up a business of their own, but they learn to fall in love with it. You didn't feel that corporate was for you, or was, or
well, I did corporate. So just
really
I worked for Procter and Gamble for several years, and I really enjoyed the type of work over there. And the mindset that I always had coming in was that I want to learn a lot. If it jives in my own values, what I want as I get older, then probably I would stay with the company longer. But I did realize that there came a point where what they often say, it's called the Golden Handcuffs, right? Sometimes if you get used to the 15-30 mentality. It's like a handcuffs, because eventually your salary keeps going up to the point that you don't want to leave, right? So that's what happens over there. And what I realized that I needed, I guess, was the idea that you have to be, it's that hunger mentality where you're out there, when you're out there hustling to grab an opportunity, which you won't necessarily get if you work in a company. Because that happens, of course, you can still be a bit you can be an entrepreneur in a company, but to not have to not have a parachute, to not have a fallback of working in the company, I mean, that's a bit different, right? So I remember David Lee Chu, I had a chance to speak to him before, and we were offering some of our company's our family businesses properties to be marketed through his company. And I was a bit embarrassed to approach him at the start, because these were small pieces of property compared to the large swaths of commercial properties which he was selling. And he told me something that really resonated with me. He said, if it moves, we'll kill it. So parang that just tells you, it doesn't matter how big or how small the opportunity is, you run after it. And that's what basically I learned when I became an entrepreneur. But it's the idea that it's that hunger mentality. You're not waiting for the 15-30. You're always out there grabbing whatever opportunities you can get, big or small. Then eventually, when you have enough experience or wisdom, tucked in your mind, but you can start sifting the opportunities now, which are the ones that are most satisfying, which one are the ones which are most effective or most profitable for you to.
But there are levels of risk,
Yeah.
and I would say the level of risk you took by trying something super new with Mercato, that's a pretty big risk versus franchising a Taco Bell, franchising a KFC,
Yeah.
right? So why make such a novel business model? Why introduce such a novel business model into the market?
Yeah, which is very interesting when you think about it, Bernard, because right now I run a business called I help co-found a business called easyfranchise.com. And
Mm,
Easy Franchise is a just to let people know, no, it's a business that helps. It's a one-stop shop for franchising, which helps in particular OFWs who want to invest in the Philippines, but they don't know how to invest properly to a franchise.
right.
We help them. We provide them first of all with a we solve what we call their pain points, how to invest in the franchise and how to manage the franchise remotely. We provide them with professional management. And I'll tell you a bit more
Wow.
about that later on. So we've been growing that recently, and
Yeah.
it's been helping a lot of OFWs. And in the talks which I give for Easy Franchise, I often tell people, should you put up a business first, or should you put up your own business, or should you put up a franchise? And I often tell people, well, there's nothing wrong with doing both. It's not mutually exclusive, but we tell them if you don't have enough time and resources right now, go to a franchise first because they give you an operations manual.
Right. You
They
don't
give
have
you a
to figure
good
it out
backup.
as you go. Right.
Yeah. So having said that, now why did I start off with my own business? Well, number one is because I had the time and at that time I had the time to actually put up
Mhm.
that business, I guess, no. And I wasn't. Although at the time, of course, my mind was open to doing a lot of opportunities. It was opportunity seeking at the time. We were looking, should we put up a franchise? Should we do this? Should we do that? But even at that earlier stage of being an entrepreneur, I realized that my passion, just like my dad, was the idea that you could create your own business, diba?
Mhm.
So it was coming from the sort of like your ikigai, where you deep inside the passion that you want to do with what you desire, right? Because mine was that I look at things with what we call an entrepreneurial mindset, diba? And
Mhm.
what does an entrepreneurial mindset mean? An entrepreneurial mindset means that you look at the world where it's full of opportunity. You're
Mhm.
somebody who's looking to create value creation. You're there to look to create new opportunities, new business models.
Mhm.
I often tell people, especially right now, but during this crisis, we tell people that um, your job as an entrepreneur is not to say whether the situation is good or bad. Your job as an entrepreneur is to say what are the opportunities that exist
Right.
in good times or bad times.
Right.
So, for example, if you look at this current situation that we have as of this pandemic, through regular lens, not the entrepreneurial lens, syempre nakakatakot siya because there's social distancing,
Right. And then there's a lot of changes
lockdown,
to
there's all
your
these different things, of
lifestyle.
course.
Right.
So that's the way to look at it from a regular person's lens. But what do you do when you wear the entrepreneurial lens? You tell yourself, what are the opportunities I can create right now because of social distancing? What are the opportunities
Right.
I can create right now because of this lockdown? So you
Right.
start to think differently about the situation.
Right.
It's
Or
the
what
same.
are the new problems this
Yeah.
situation has
Pro-
created
the
that I am
problems.
able to
Diba,
solve?
if you go to any if you go to any competition where people are getting investments for their tech startups, that's the first question the investor will ask you: what problem is your business trying to solve?
Oh,
Because
right.
problems for us are what we call pain points, diba? Or
Yeah.
pain points are what we call irritations. If
Yeah.
I'm irritated by something and you are also irritated by something, if I'm able to solve our common irritation, dyan ako kikita ng pera. That's how I
Right.
basically that's how we basically see the world. That's how entrepreneurs see the world. That their job is to turn these pain points into business opportunities. So we go back to the idea of Mercato Central. Where did the idea stem from in the first place?
Mhm.
For me, there were really two ideas which brought about Mercato. Number one is, it's called actually Mercato Central because the genesis of this one was that my wife and I were, when we honeymooned and we went to Florence, Italy, and we got to go to the open air market there of Mercato Central, and she really enjoyed the experience that we had over there in the Mercato Central, Italy. So she told me, I wish I could bring home this experience to the Philippines, and that kind of stuck to my head. For me, at first, I thought, nah, this is not it's not a great idea. But my wife, the brilliant entrepreneur and visionary that she was correct pala after all. That let's keep that in our memory bank, that experience. But the bigger experience that we really brought into Mercato Central was this one. me, I used to be I was a magazine editor, I was a newspaper columnist, and oftentimes they would send us to different countries in Asia to do what we call media tours. So we would go to the country, we would write about that country, we would take pictures, right? And whenever we would go to places like Singapore or Thailand or Taiwan, the first place that the tour organizer would usually bring us to, where they could feature about a slice of life or culture of the area, was, guess where they would bring us? The first place that the tour
The
organizer
hawker stalls.
the hawker stalls would be the first place they would bring us to.
Right.
And I said, wow, this is a nice place because, it's full of culture, it's safe, secure, hygienic. It's a place where both locals and foreigners converge. And I was thinking, how come there is no equivalent here in the Philippines for that type of experience?
Right.
But at the same
Now
time,
that you mention it, you're right. There weren't.
Experience over here. And at the same time, I was also asking myself, how come there's none, despite the fact that Filipinos have black holes for stomachs? Diba? We eat almost every time of the day. But more than that one, if you look at the city, there's the mushrooming of the BPO, the call centers, people who are working late at night. And they eat dinner, let's say they eat lunch at about 11 p.m., right? And if they eat dinner at 11 p.m., and then they had 120, 150 pesos on them, would they rather go to a convenience store fried chicken to have their lunch, or would they rather go to a place that could serve them hot, authentic, freshly made, home cooked food? So for me, that's really what stuck to our head when we created the initial iteration of Mercato Central. So that's really that. So it just goes back to what is your entrepreneurial mindset? What is the pain point that you want to solve? What is that one thing that you think is underserved, that's missing, that's growing in the problem? So it's really going back to that sort of mentality that helps.
But where does passion come into it, right? Like I am very careful with the follow your passion statement. In fact, I'm not a fan of the follow your passion. I'm more a fan of fall in love with what you've got, fall in love with what you're doing. But where does passion come into the equation? Was a passion for food necessary to be successful with Mercato?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because you know what? When you opened Mercato Central back in November 2010, I was actually an ovo-lacto vegetarian, which meant that 90% of the food that was in the market, I could not eat it. I could not eat, diba? But you see, I wasn't so much in love with food as I was in love with creating businesses, with the idea of creating this business that could solve a pain point. So really, that was more where I was coming from. That was what I was passionate about. I was not passionate about.
Do you have a devil's advocate? Like when you come up with ideas like this, is there somebody that behaves like a devil's advocate for you, that tries to shoot the idea down? Oh, I've got this, bro. I've got this idea. Try to shoot it down, like find out where the holes are.
The thing that you have to, well, for me, no, I mean, as an entrepreneur, there's always people who have, it's always very good for you to be in a I always say it's always good to have great mentors, or to be not, I always say this when I hear Brother Bo speak. You have to put yourself in the group of people in a part of sort of positive peer pressure to get where you want to go, right? And me, at that time, when I put up Mercato Central, I was and I still am. I was a go negosyo host, diba? Like I said, network is your net worth. So I met so many great entrepreneurs, and you kind of flesh the idea out together with them, diba? That they help expand on the idea, they help improve the idea that you want to create, because there's so many businesses that would have been shut down anyway in the first place, especially if you don't exist in an entrepreneurial community to support your ideas, to help you grow those ideas. Because like the Office for Entrepreneurship, and I told this to you earlier, it's not ready, aim, fire. Because I used to work for a brand, for marketing people, and they were very precise. If you got it wrong, you're out, right? So ready, aim, fire. The first shot must be your best shot, right? But as an entrepreneur, it's precision, not speed. Diba? It's ready, aim, you fire, then you aim again, then you fire, then you aim, then you fire, because you've got to keep on readjusting the target. It's a moving target that you have to keep on readjusting how you're setting up the business. And one of the things that I had to learn about when I had to reevaluate sort of like my own business principles was that I had to unlearn a lot of things I learned when I was in corporate, because there was a certain parang rigidity to it all, diba? Or parang it doesn't hurt, but that there's a different discipline naman for. I just realized now there's a different discipline naman for entrepreneurship as well. Diba? Like if you fail, it's okay. Basta tayo ka agad, gawa ka agad, diba? Don't worry, there's not of those things came into play.
How do I encourage that, RJ? Like, take for example, in a culture like ours, Truelogic is a bit startup-y, and I come from a dot-com background, no? So it's very, in my opinion, it's more entrepreneuring than your standard corporate. Like we're not a Unilever, we're not a P&G. People are not just allowed to make mistakes; they're encouraged to make mistakes. Because your boss is not going to sit over your shoulder and then mentor you 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. No, they expect to teach you a method. You try it, you fail, you do better. You try it again. You might fail, you might succeed, you do better. But for us, one of the biggest challenges in terms of developing people is the willingness to make mistakes. We actually measure for the entrepreneurship of an applicant now. Just because of that, and what we're realizing is kapag yung entrepreneurship score nila on a test that they take is high, all that tells us is that they're not averse to making mistakes. They're pretty resilient. No, they can also get bored quickly, but they're pretty resilient. They're not afraid of making mistakes. How do you groom that? Because most people are not comfortable with making a mistake, with being wrong. And we already tell them, you're not going to get fired if you make a mistake, right? All we got to do, we will fix it. We're not going to put you in a position where, you fail and it all comes crashing down. But how do you encourage that in somebody?
I think number one, it's cultural, especially for Filipino. It's a face-saving thing. You don't
Yeah.
want to look like that you failed at anything. And number two, I think also it's also upbringing. I mean, of course, it's cultural. It's also, of course, upbringing. Like for me, I grew up also in that atmosphere that I didn't want to fail, and I have so many great spectacular stories of failure, which I actually share when I give a lot of these different forums right now. Because and it's also difficult for me, to be honest with you, because if I see my children struggling in school or not doing too well, it's always a struggle for me to say, okay, it's not okay. Parang I want you to do your best, but I don't want you to fail. I don't feel it's not good.
Right.
So but it's a difficult thing to sort of break out of. But I realize that for failure, it's something that you need to do. Once you fail the first time around, it becomes easier. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
Sometimes
Especially when you recover from the first one,
yeah,
right? And you realize, oh, I didn't die.
you didn't die. This is not the end all and be all. It's usually, that's part of, I'm give a long talk on this one, but it's part of the grit, diba? That long-term perseverance over
Yeah.
time, diba? Because, it happens to, let's say, there are, diba? Angela Duckworth in her book Grit, no, she also talks
Great.
about that the top students, diba, are not the most successful students are not necessarily the ones who are the top of their class. Diba?
Yeah.
Or the valedictorians of the class, diba?
Right.
Sometimes yung nagiging successful pa sa buhay, yung mga kapit sa patlim sa grades or na-kick out
Right.
na, or but why? Because nobody expected anything of them, and then they just kind of made their way, right, in their life.
Right.
And those who were the best in the class, the valedictorians, they wanted stable jobs. They wanted jobs, parang they wanted
Right.
jobs where
They wanted Wall Street jobs. They wanted
not even
golden
Wall Street,
parachutes.
or very very jobs where there's a stable source of income.
Right.
The other people, the ones who were successful, the ones parang nothing to lose, diba? So they really went all the way. And I'm saying this one because that's part of that mentality which they developed. No, okay, if I fail, it's okay. I can get up again. Diba? Usually, I know this one. Diba? If it's the ones who are if valedictorians, they do very very well, and or a smart person does very very well, all of a sudden pag nag-isang grade na 75 or 0, wala na, di ba? Nag-amok na yan because kasi nasira yung kanilang perfect grade point average or
Right,
whatever, di ba?
right. The streak,
And then
the streak broke.
pagdating naman sa yung mga okay lang grades, parang sige, okay, I failed, it's okay, do it again, So usually these are the ones who become a bit more successful. And I admit I was one of those na I was, I need to get high grades and everything was
Right.
like that. But I failed a couple of times. I realized, wait, I failed. Then the world is not over. Okay, so
Right.
let me do this again. So for example, I put up a Mercato Central. I put up a Mercato Central in Cagayan de Oro one time, and I give talks on entrepreneurship, and I was a Globe My Business Ambassador. And one time when I was a Globe My Business Ambassador, somebody wrote in the post, why did you get him to be a Globe My Business Ambassador? Nagbukas siya ng Mercato Central sa Cagayan de Oro, sinara nila. So parang he wanted me to feel like, oh, you're a failure. Therefore, as a failure, dapat hindi ka na kukunin dyan. Because that's why it's cultural, di ba? Parang, pag you fail, hindi ka na pwede, ha? So, of course, the thing is, what they don't realize is that we as entrepreneurs, we wear this as a badge of honor, di ba?
Right.
You sort of wear the thing as a badge of honor. Okay, you fail. Siyempre, masakit pa minsan-minsan that you fail kasi siyempre you put a lot of work into it. But di ba? So siyempre, iyak ka ng konti. You feel bad. You lost some money.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that, you failed fast, you failed forward, then you get your lessons and then you start again, di ba?
Right.
Kasi I would like to think that, I've run many markets over the years. In fact, not all Mercatos are successful. But guess what? From the markets that we opened and that we closed, we've learned so much that the markets that continue to remain strong are the results of the markets which we closed in the past, di ba? Kasi cumulative knowledge mo, di ba? So you're still able to use that right now. And let me juxtapose that to the current situation right now. Nung pandemya, di ba? During this pandemic, what happened during this pandemic? We had to close down Mercato Central, right? Because all of a sudden, places of mass gathering were banned by the government. You could open up by the government. But of course, even physically, people would want to. Even if it was allowed, people would not want to go. So again, how do you see it? It comes to you as being okay. That's another pain point, right? That's a pain point that you see. How do you continue to do business? So we go back to what was Simon Sinek calls it the why. What start with why? We have to look back at what is the why for business. The why for business is to help small food business entrepreneurs. We are a small food business incubator. That's our advocacy and that's our business, right? So we have to go back to that why. And then, so that's what we kept in mind. Oh, how do we continue this business right now? Now we can't bring any more people together. They want that Mercato Central experience, pero hindi na namin magagawa ng physical. And then I got some really great advice from the president of Phoenix Petroleum. His name is Bong Fadulyon. And during one of the talks that I was giving in the midst of the crisis is this one, sabi niya sa akin, RJ, buksan mo yung Mercato Central. Ipuwersa mo. Ha? Sabi ko, Sir Bong, in the midst of this crisis, you want me to open up my Mercato? Sabi niya, yes, you have to. Because you're sure to make mistakes along the way. You're sure, that's for sure. Okay. But the thing is, parang yung athlete nagko-condition ka lang ulit di ba? You have to recondition yourself. You're preparing yourself again. Because by the time everything reopens again, you have to be ready to race out of that door. Hindi pwede sabihin, hindi pwede na nagka-crisis, nagka-pandemya, nagsara ka ng tindahan, manonood ka ng Netflix buong araw, pagkatapos yan, pag wala nang problema, bukas ka tindahan ulit. Bago na yung mundo. The world is already new. It's very different. So what had to happen? So during the time, we really took that to heart. My wife and I really took that to heart. And what we realized was that, okay, let's experiment with different models right now. Let's see where we can pivot our idea of being a small food business incubator. Can we still do brick and mortar? Can we still do physical? We tried inside, in doing community markets or markets inside condominiums. Didn't quite work, but we learned something from it. Right. We learned something from that one. We tried to do an online marketplace for our vendors, where we tried to create a marketplace for all the vendors who used to be there on the Mercato Central page, on the physically, but just put them together digitally. It met with limited success. But the thing is, you could consider them failure, di ba? If you're a regular person, the failure yan. Yeah. But as an entrepreneur, we said, there's some insight that we're gaining from doing all these different projects, di ba? Right. So our first pivot was to say, okay, we looked at the outdoor market. Di ba what happened? The alfresco is okay, di ba? Yeah. And we're one of those people in those few positions that alfresco is good because that's what we did. That's what you are, no? So now, how could we pivot that into becoming a safe, socially distanced, IATF, safety, compliant, business? And that's the first part we did. And we said, maybe it can still be an advocacy, but this time sa advocacy namin, nakakatulong tayo sa mga maliliit na negosyante, pati din sa mga restaurant because they're all suffering. So we opened up Mercato Central using that sort of logic, di ba? Right. Now it's something that helps small food businesses grow na alfresco. So that works. Oh, wow, so the business model is okay for that one, di ba? So we started doing that model again. And then the next one naman was, okay, we realized that we were doing this online, trying to bring together different vendors to recreate the Mercato Central experience. So when we were doing that one, people were ordering from us from, let's say, they were ordering bagnet. We thought they would just order from one vendor, but no, they were ordering from 2 to 3 vendors online. Right, exactly like Mercato experience, right? Recreated experience. But the problem was that they would cancel their orders because they would realize that's three delivery points. So that's 3 delivery charges that they would get. Right. So our people said, what if we were able to put into one venue all 15 vendors, 16 vendors, where you could cross order from any of them, but only for 1 delivery charge, di ba? And that was the logic of us creating the Mercato United Kitchen. That's our one kitchen right now in Ayala Mall Circuit, that we brought together all these different vendors that you can order just for one delivery charge.
Right.
And so if you're listening right now, patulong naman dyan, please help our small food vendors right now. And if you want to join that market, you're more than welcome to as well. You can go to our Mercato Central Facebook page. We're also available on GrabFood, and Food Panda. Call 77190808 or favorites.mercatocentral.ph.
And we'll publish it also like on the coverage after this. We're going to make sure that we publish it. It's part of our newsletter. It's on our blog. Because I agree, you have to help the small businesses.
Yeah.
This is why I always tell people also tip your Grab drivers.
Yeah. But it's really where I'm saying that this is really how you think about that situation. It's key, diba? Those are all failures, but these failures we had to use them as kumbaga ammunition or as content for us to recreate the business model right now.
Right.
And one of the biggest business models which we're coming up with very soon is actually an app. It's the Mercato app, and we're developing that together with David Almirol of Multisys. I don't know if you know Multisys. They won Tech Company of the Year at the Asia CEO Awards. Dave Almirol is 10 Outstanding Young Men awardees. And this is the interesting thing, right? I said, diba, your network is your net worth. Diba? Yeah. How did I meet Dave in the first place? I met Dave because I hosted his wedding reception, his 10th wedding reception program. I mean, it's such a great conversation. He said he liked what I was doing. Then we both showed up. He saw me there in the Asia CEO Awards, that I want something there as well. I said, oh, so you must be somebody that I can work with, right? So, when I pitched the idea to him, it was perfect. He liked the idea. We're coming up with a Mercato app. And in the Mercato app, we're doing online what we could not do physically, where we aggregate small food vendors online to grow. And then we realized, what do we have to solve for them in terms of a pain point? So let's say, for example, all these new small food vendors emerged during this crisis. Diba? Marami mga online home-based vendors, diba? Yeah. Pero anong mga pain point nila? Una-una, solo sila mag-market, 'di ba? Ibig sabihin niyan, galing lang sa bahay, diyan sila nagma-market or galing sa kanilang so there's no aggregation, there's no consolidation, 'di ba? So you spend your own money. Number two,
if you buy from there, like that's your only choice. You can't get all of the other selections.
Or number two is payment is another problem, 'di ba? Sila na yung facilitate ng payment, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Cash, 'di ba? It's a long process, so pain point rin 'yan. Third pain point, delivery. Sila pa yung magbo-book either. Ikaw ba, pag, if somebody tells me before, please book the rider for me, ayoko na, di ba?
Yeah.
Diba? Or if they have to book the rider naman, effort rin sa kanila na i-book yung rider. So those are three pain points which they had. With that, I put it all together. That's why I put it all together now na in the app, the Mercato app, it's a marketplace for all these small food vendors where they can put their products. And after that one, it's free. And after that one, the next thing is that we have all the payment platforms available there. From credit cards to all the e-payment platforms to even COD can be done on the platform. And third, we already have all the riders available there as well. You don't have to look for the rider. The platform will look for the rider for you. So that's sort of like the Mercato app. And all these things, like I said, emerged because we understood our failures.
Yes, and you're also discovering, like you wouldn't have figured out that there was friction in multiple delivery points if you did not see the cancellations, right? And so you sort of figure that out. There's something you said, that sort of stuck with me. It's when you said, when we got stuck in the pandemic. Now, do you look at it as like, oh my god, what are we going to do, or are you going to think, oh, there's a new problem, there's something to solve, no? And I remember early in 2020. Most of our clients stuck with us, and God bless like everybody that works with Truelogic. Most of them stuck with us to the point na minsan kapag tinatanong ako ng ibang mga friends namin sa mga ibang ahensya, like, hey, how are you guys doing? Like during the pandemic, are you guys okay? Eh di syempre ako naman, because we didn't shrink, we grew. Because there were some businesses that thought na, okay, my only customers are now the people that are online, I have to accelerate. And then but we also had clients nang unang instinct is, whoa, pandemic, pull back on budget. And the first budget that people will usually take out of is
marketing.
Is marketing, right? So that's the first thing that they will attempt to pull. And we sort of went on a mission to say, no, if everybody is pulling out their marketing, then our clients will not. No, so we sort of stood our ground. Like parang this was our position during the pandemic na, ba't ka ngayon magpo-pull out ng marketing? Lahat ng competitors mo nagpo-pull out ng marketing.
Yeah.
right? If there's any time to
Actually,
double down, it's
Burns,
now.
yeah, actually, that's one of the great things I learned from Procter and Gamble, because when I was working there in the late 90s, in the mid to late 90s, is that there was an economic depression at the time. When that happens, diba, P&G doesn't take away marketing; they double down on marketing,
Yeah,
because you realize that this is when you have to be more present for your client.
right,
But, I mean, I realized I had no. I mean, at that time, we also realized we had no money at the time. But sabi namin, we cannot not be present during the pandemic. We need to show them
right.
that we're there, that we're fixing up, we understand what you're doing. So, and I think that's why I think we were able to survive, because we created sort of marketing presence and people could see the efforts that we were also doing
Right.
online. And if you look right now, diba, even in this current pandemic, there were two people who had two different strategies, Coca-Cola and Procter and Gamble. And you can see this
Mhm.
online right now. Procter and Gamble doubled down on marketing. Their share went up. Coca-Cola said, okay, let's pause on marketing because it might not be sensitive right now. I
Right.
guess,
It might be insensitive, right?
but then the shares went down, diba? In terms of
Yeah.
sales, diba? So this goes to show you that sometimes being omnipresent, or at least being present in marketing, is key. But the difference now here is that what is the message that you are delivering? And even in digital marketing,
Right.
I mean, there's two ways to do it. I mean, because I guess when they also work with you, they're paying for the creative and strategic input, diba? But for, let's
Mhm.
say, an MSME like myself, where everything's mostly in-house, you don't necessarily have to do boost posting just to keep that presence. But the idea is that you're present, your message is very strong over there.
Right.
If you got a good organic message that's out there, people will appreciate it. And we could only do
I
organic
also think that
messaging
that's
during the
the
time.
advantage of working with you guys, no? Like, take, for example, so if I'm a food business and I distribute my food through Mercato Central, I'm available through Mercato Central. I don't have to personally be worried about being present all the time. No, I have to admit there I have some favorite food brands that disappeared during the pandemic. Like,
Mm.
yeah, regardless of how you try to support it, na alam mo yun, sometimes you'll call and they're there, and then sometimes you'll call and then they're not, and then sometimes you go to their store and it's open, and sometimes you go to their store and it's not. And there's nothing like inconsistency to kill a business. But you guys create some of that sense of consistency by keeping the messaging consistent, by keeping businesses in touch with their customers. The Then the customers still know, oh, buhay pa sila, sige, wait, you know what, let me order. Or they'll see a message, they might not have been thinking takeout na, oh, you know what, yeah, I wanted something other than what I ate for lunch earlier today, right? And so you're able to capture impulsive purchases just because you're there when they're ready to buy, and not something all businesses have done during the lockdowns. I'm going to park Mercato Central for a bit. I do want to talk about Enter PH.
Okay,
So what's the concept behind Enter PH?
okay. So again, no, I mean, let's go back to the idea of entrepreneurial mindset, diba? You're
Mhm.
solving pain points, and that's sort of like the overarching theme when we come up with businesses, right? So for Mercato, the idea was that we put it up because there was a pain point which we could solve, or there was an underserved need,
Right.
right? So when we thought of Enter PH, so you can go to enterph.com. The idea is that um, there is an underserved market. Let's say the Philippines is known to be a place for BPOs, or for
Mhm.
people to offshore or outsource their businesses, uh, to offshore their business, because we can do usually their business. We can do it for 30% of the value. Let's say for
Mhm.
call centers or whatever, you can do it for 30% of the value. But if you're a large business in the US doing that one, you'd probably contact another large company here, a consultancy
Yeah.
firm, to be able to put it up. But just like us, there's a large number of MSMEs who also need to save costs in putting up their businesses abroad,
Mhm.
in America, in Singapore. And there are different business models which they can actually do to set things up to make it cost effective. For example, you don't have to send the whole, you just don't have to, you can just outsource. You can put up a whole office here. They do all the back office work here, and then they just send one
Mhm.
client back in the States. These type of things, no? So there are medium-sized businesses who can't afford the services of the larger companies, and
Mhm.
that's the larger market for us. We feel that the MSME market abroad
Right.
are those who want to put money here in the Philippines, and those are the ones who we target in Enter PH. So Enter PH is trying to address that need for businesses which want to be able to have more cost-effective solutions by bringing their outsourcing or offshoring their business here to the Philippines, and that's what we did. And
So
this
what do you do to start those conversations?
and then that
What do
was
you
all
do to start
digital.
those
That
conversations?
was all digital first marketing. Really, that was literally
Mhm.
realizing the importance of engaging companies who had that expertise in doing I mean,
Right.
you the strategy, but it was, you had to invest a bit in growth hacking strategies to make sure that the message goes out properly.
Right.
And that's basically what we did at the start. We had no local customers. These were all basic people whom we had contacted online or
Mhm.
through our online messaging, whether it be on the web, on SEO, on Google Ads, on I guess Facebook, and eventually as you go out, like I said, diba, if failure isn't a problem with you, diba, sometimes okay, so SEO didn't work, but Facebook works. So let's put
Right.
more of our money there. So that's basically what we did over time, and that's how we grew that business. And this is what people don't realize about the BPO business here in the Philippines. The time that the BPO business in the Philippines grew the fastest was in 2008 to 2010, when there was the U.S. economic bubble. So many of these companies in the
Right.
States weren't doing too well, so they had to
Right.
find ways to save money, and they brought
Yeah,
their
the country that I think is emerging with a lot of micro BPOs in the country, I'm surprised, is Australia. When we look for talent, when we look for digital talent, and when we look for experience, what we'll realize is we interview people from small agencies that we never heard of, right? Because they don't compete in our local space. Apparently, they are Australian agencies, but their specialists are here. Um, and I'll have to say the way they're set up is a mix. Like some of them have set up correctly, some of them have not set up correctly.
understand.
Do you guys get to talk to these guys a lot? Like, are you realizing that you're getting more conversations
During this time,
from one
especially
side or
during this time of the
another?
pandemic, there have been people coming up to us already saying, "Parang we need to formalize now our setup, our business setup
Okay,
now,"
right.
because I guess when this pandemic became more long, I mean, you could do de facto relationships prior to the pandemic, but I guess because of how the pandemic is changing the dynamics of work, marami tao ngayon they're having to formalize right now the whole setup and
Right.
arrangement. So that's what's
Before,
happening. And
yeah,
right now, what's happening is that was the silver lining of this pandemic for Enter PH business. That we could have gone silent if we wanted to, diba? But no, we realized that maybe this time to
yeah,
even market more, to put our word
yeah,
out even more,
yeah.
to say,
Always, always.
in this crisis, and you need to be able to keep your company afloat. Come to a place where you can do a lot of cost savings. Come to the Philippines.
Mhm. Before I go back to Mercato Central, we talked about easy franchise earlier, no? So here, what was the problem you were trying to solve on
Okay.
easy franchise?
Great. So again, no, going back to the idea of pain point and the entrepreneurial mindset, I get invited a lot to speak on entrepreneurship, and I was invited one time by a Filipino community, an expat Filipino community, to speak over there
Mhm.
in Dubai. And when I was there speaking about entrepreneurship, this is what I noticed. I saw that over there, I came with somebody who was a water refilling franchisor. So she owned the water refilling franchise. At ang daming, when she offered the franchise, ang daming interesadong kumuha ng franchise. Kasi when
Mhm.
you're living abroad, there's a couple of things, di ba? Unang-una, they want to, they don't want to live there forever. They want to have an exit plan. Gusto umuwi sa
Right.
Pilipinas because they're just based on a long-term contract. But, so they have to have an exit plan sa na pag-uwi sa Pilipinas, may naghihintay na negosyo para sa kanila, di ba?
Right.
Hopefully back when they come back to the Philippines. Or for example, many of them also when they're based abroad, laging nasa scam eh, di ba? There are silly
Yeah.
scammers available or out there, so because they don't have complete information about putting up a
Yeah.
business, di ba? So I realized, oh, this is an opportunity. Ang dami may gusto. They want this opportunity of owning a franchise, of owning a
Yeah.
business if they can, right? So that's one thing I realized. But they just needed complete information, complete data. They needed integrity. They need somebody who's directly in touch with all these franchisors. The second thing the second insight I gained when I was there was that as when they would ask these franchisors, these OFWs, when they would ask the question to the franchise owner, sino magpapatakbo ng negosyo ko habang nandito pa ako sa Dubai?
Right.
And the only answer that they could give were like, for example, oh, maybe you've got somebody in the Philippines, a family friend or a family member who can run the
Yeah.
business for you. And more often than not, if you get a family member or a friend to run the business for you, they might run the business to the ground because the passion is not there,
Yeah. Bad idea.
there,
Always a bad
or the
idea.
money is not put into the business. That happens a lot. So mag-aaway-away lang kayo lahat, di ba?
Yeah.
So the
Right.
second
Kasi
point there was
kamag-anak eh, right? And then a need
kamag-anak or
comes up.
kaibigan, di ba? So the opportunity there is, can somebody run that business for them professionally while they are still abroad? So two
Mhm.
things, di ba? It's finding the correct franchise investment and finding the correct franchise management. And from there, that's where Easy Franchise, the idea of an easy franchise was born. And so that's why we created Easy
But then you
Franchise.
have to partner up with franchise businesses, and you have to have conversations on two sides here, right? Like
Yes.
the franchise businesses, and then connecting them with the right OFWs, with the right
Yeah.
people that want to take up the franchise.
Yes, exactly. So you have to be also very good in, so it's a sort of like a B2B and a B2C business, right? Business to business,
Right.
to client. And I'm used to that because that's what Mercato is. Our business to business, our vendors, our business to client are the are the vend are the are the customers of the vendors, right? Here naman,
Mhm.
B2B is the franchisors, the B2C are the franchisees, right?
Right.
So, what we did is what made it a bit different was that, we actively market our franchisors. But on top of that
Mhm.
one, at the same time, we've helped digitize the whole application process to make it much, much easier, diba? Because if you're a friend, there's not much need for paperwork to be shuffled back and forth offline. These are more on, we brought them all online. And diba, the ultimate objective, if I'm a franchisor also is I'm looking for franchisees who can give me the most um, smooth distribution channel or marketing channel for me to be able to acquire more franchisees at the lowest franchise cost. But that's what you want after all. So
Yeah.
that's why I think we're getting a lot of them right now. In fact, we just concluded International Franchise Day. So that was on August 28th. And we've got a lot of new franchises actually coming up. And I'm so happy to see many of them because many of these franchises, which are becoming very sellable right now, are essential franchises, things that have emerged during this pandemic to become essential to many customers or to
Mhm.
many clients.
So I actually still have like a slew of questions like I wanted to ask for our agenda. Pero time is flying. I just want two parting messages before I go to the questions coming
Sure,
from
sure.
the audience, no? So what advice would you give the business people that are joining us in this conversation? Now that we're still disrupted, we're still in the pandemic. Again, ultimately, this will be, a story we tell our children and our grandchildren down the road. But what would you tell them, like if they're encountering hardships now? So that's one. And then two is, what advice would you give somebody that thinks they might be an emerging entrepreneur, but they just haven't taken the big leap of faith to to start their own business? So let's start with the first, right? Like the guys that are
I
already
think
in business.
they kind of both dovetail for me when I give this answer here right now, no.
Mhm.
And the first one, the idea is that if you are in trouble right now during the pandemic, trust me, so am I, diba?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not here just to paint the rosy picture that everything's okay with my business. I mean, I'm great at thinking things through, but the execution is like they say, the devil is in the details. So it's not an easy journey for all of us. So yeah, so una that's it. I'm not here to provide some magic pill and your business will get better.
Mhm.
Just sharing that advice which I learned from my own, sharing it with you guys. But the bigger thing I want to share is the idea that again, it's the idea that we're able to look at things like an entrepreneurial lens, diba? Because you know what we have to realize right now is that when you put up a business, is your business solving a pain point? But it's always the first thing. Is your business
Mhm.
solving a pain point? Now,
Yeah.
the thing that you have to realize, that we all have to realize right now, is that all businesses will be disrupted, diba? All businesses that are created will be disrupted. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when will it be disrupted. Because technology is disrupting all businesses. It's called
Yes.
disruptive innovation. So it's disrupting, you know, Airbnb disrupted the hotel business.
Yeah.
Uber disrupted the taxi business. There are many things these digital banks might disrupt the banking business. So all this, so that's what's happening here right now. So you'll either be the disruptor or you'll be the disrupted, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
so that's the person that's happening for us mga negosyante. But the second thing right now is we're also experiencing another type of disruption. Yung disruption naman ngayon is from this black swan event, yung pandemic, di ba?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, whether you're being disrupted by technology or you're being disrupted by pandemic, pareho pa rin yung entrepreneurial mindset mo, di ba?
Right.
Your job is to continue to find ways
Yeah.
to solve
Right.
pain points. And these pain points can be the pain points of the people to access your product or your service, or you find
Yeah.
the pain
It's
point of somebody
like,
else.
what new problem did this
Oh,
create
that's
that
not the
I
problem.
can
Oh,
solve that creates value?
yeah. Or you can solve it's being experienced by somebody else.
Mhm.
You have to solve that problem. And you might realize that sometimes what you create during this pandemic might be longer and more sustainable business models. Because if you look at it, in 2008, during the US economic crisis, what businesses emerged from that crisis that have become sustainable and long-term? Instagram came out at that time.
Yeah.
Instagram, Uber came out at that time. Airbnb came out at that time. Groupon came out at that time. So these businesses, although they were there to address immediate needs or immediate pain points during the time, they grew to become sustainable long-term
Right.
businesses as well, diba? So that's sort
Uber,
of
I think, started off just selling excess limousine driver time. Like that was it. Kasi
and then
economy
they
was
pivot
down,
from
nobody was
business.
riding limos.
Yeah, and then it pivots because people, may pain point dito. Kailangan ayusin ko this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kailangan ayusin. Okay, pain point dito. So kailangan ayusin. I mean, that's basically all of us. That's the story of our entrepreneurship journey. And for
Yeah.
many of us who are entrepreneurs, who are emerging entrepreneurs who want to be there, then you're currently employed in another job. I guess my advice for them is that, if you can, kung kaya mo naman, especially now we're all work from home, you can hustle. You can hustle on your side job, which is your
Mm.
entrepreneurship job. And for many, that eventually, when that job that is your entrepreneurship job is making close to what you are making in your day job, and you're only giving it 50% of your time, then baka time to switch na. Because if you give it
Right.
100%, baka you make double of what you currently make in your job.
Yeah. I
So
agree. I agree. And it is always like, it's like what Plato said, diba? How you see the problem is the problem. So it's really your choice in terms of seeing, are you looking at it as a problem, or are you looking at it as an opportunity?
happy, yeah.
Yeah,
Agree,
I'll
exactly.
jump into the questions because the chat is filling up. So I think the first one was, what's your take on restaurants like Wingspan or like Wingstop in the US that decided to being brick and mortar and pivot to full digital?
I think it's great. I mean, we're all experimenting with the business model here right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's many brands right now which are delivery only brands which are being created. These are cloud kitchens, dark kitchens.
Mm,
There's many business models which are emerging, and that's good because it just goes to show you that they're dynamic, that there are different business models that are coming up.
yeah,
In the end, naman is, are you serving a need properly, diba?
yeah,
And is it going to create traction? I think it's great. I mean, we're doing the same thing technically with our cloud kitchen, where we bring together different brands really, and then market them. So there might be more cloud kitchens actually coming up, given that many of us, given the current state of the health situation and the
yeah. The
quarantine.
follow-up question actually was, do you think the same will happen here? And I think the answer to that is, it sort of depends if the behavior persists post-pandemic, which I think some of the
It's already
behaviors
happening
will.
here right now. I mean, there's
Yeah,
businesses which are emerging right now, which are just, they were purely bored. They're delivery only. They're out of commissary kitchens being made. They're just very good at marketing the idea. Or there's some restaurants
right.
right now that have already just shut down, and when you're ordering from them online, you're not ordering from the restaurant. You're ordering from their commissary kitchen. That's the same
Yeah,
idea.
I even read some data from 2020 that last year 19 million Filipinos did their first online transaction, like their very first online transaction. Right, 19 million. That's like a lot. Some of those guys will never go back to, or
Exactly.
some of them will never go back to just purely retail. Some
Exactly.
of the behavior will persist. Like, I've been buying stuff for almost 20 years online. But today, you don't need a credit card anymore, no? You've got Dragon Pay and LBC. They enable COD. Dati wala yun, right? 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing. There are so many solutions now.
That's right.
So I'll move to the another question. So somebody is saying, there's a point when we say that people don't always get to pursue their passion. So you have to excel, or learn to love the industry or the career you're in, and that's why some people have their jobs, and that's why some people have passion projects on the side. But COVID has also brought the mentality that life is short. Um, to do something and so you have to do something, or don't burn your time just doing things that will just stress you out, and then you don't get to enjoy. What would be the top three considerations when it's time to take the plunge, to leave corporate and go into business? That's a great question, I think, for you, right? Which we sort of touched on a little earlier.
Well, I guess,
Like, mhm,
it's, for me, it's really, because I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, it depends on what success means to you, right? I guess
mhm,
it's what success means. If it's financial success that you're looking for, is it personal success that you're looking for? Is it professional success that you're looking for, in terms of the job? Because if it's financial success, then you want to get a business that hopefully when you leave, it's doing very, very well,
right,
but you might not love it. If it's
right,
personal success, you leave a high-paying job to do something that doesn't pay a lot, but you love it, diba?
Yeah.
Or you stay in your job because you love it. So I think that it's not so much. It's. I guess it's really. I can't. It's not a straight question for me to answer because I know many friends who are corporate who love what they do, and corporate life
Yeah.
is their lifeblood because
Yeah,
that's
it's the bomb. It's the bomb
that's
for
how
them.
they're
Like
built.
for me personally, I think it's the bomb.
Oh, because for me, I'm just not built to do corporate, diba? And
Mm.
I was also, and I can feel it. I can feel it because I'm also a creative writer. I'm a fictionist. I used to I publish books. I'm a National Writer Workshop alumnus. So parang and I loved it. And the thing is, if I left the job to do it full time, I mean, I love it, but I can't. It won't. I
It
don't
won't
love it
put
enough
food
that
on
it's
the
going to support.
table.
Yeah,
Right, right.
to support everything, right? But I really love writing, and if I could, I would spend a lot of time doing that. I'm just lucky that when I left, that what I was doing is a job that the passion just happened to be that it wasn't so much in the business, but in the entrepreneurship. I'm in love with the entrepreneurship mindset because I know that what I'm doing right now might not be even the last business that I'm putting up
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's what I'm passionate about. So
And I don't think there's ever a retirement. Like I think the first clue that you're an entrepreneur, at least if I give people advice, if people are telling me I'm trying to figure out if I'm an entrepreneur, my first question will usually be, what's retirement age for you, right? And if they give me a number, stick to your job.
yeah, basically that's true because I've
Entrepreneurship is
never
like a
considered,
yeah, because it's a calling. Eh. It's not a job. It's a calling. You
In
don't
fact, when
retire
you
from
asked
being
me
an
that when I was
entrepreneur.
going at retirement age, it was not something. It was a theoretical question. Eh.
Yeah. So I've got there's another question I think that's for you. So somebody's asking, what are the precautionary measures that the businesses that are part of the cloud kitchen take to control COVID?
In the
Um,
cloud kitchen in Ayala, all the tenants are being vaccinated. Of
mhm,
course, aside from all the safety and healthy protocols, all the tenants,
right.
all the employees have to be vaccinated, which is great. So almost everybody, I think, if not everybody's going to receive at least their first dose.
The follow-up question is, has there ever been a situation where a member of the Mercato community had been affected by COVID? And then what does the community do to support these people that become COVID positive or
Well,
whatnot?
fortunately, as far as I know, there's nobody na we have to close down because we're very strict about that one here as well. But
Mhm,
if you remember, there is my Mercato employees and there is my Mercato um, tenants, di ba?
mhm.
So among the employees, there's nobody who's caught COVID amongst those who work in the market. So we're very careful about that one. And
Mhm.
then we're very, very careful about all the protocols that we've established in the market per se, in terms of distance and location. That was very key. So right now we haven't had that's why, and we're also outdoor. Remember, it's all
Yeah,
a fresco market at the same time. So thankfully we haven't had any reported cases of COVID from
good,
both people
good to
going there
hear.
or also people who work for us.
Another question is entrepreneurship and then bringing your business digital. Is it the same? Is it super different?
Again, it's part of the continuum lang naman, di ba? I mean,
Yeah,
this
I
doesn't
agree.
need to define whether entrepreneurship is digital or not. The entrepreneurship is you're solving a problem, di ba?
Right, right.
So if you're solving a problem, kung mag-digital ka, are you still solving? I mean, it's like me, Mercato. I was brick and mortar. Okay, na crisis. So I had to go bring more business into digitally accelerate the business to continue solving the problem, di ba? So
Hmm.
that's basically how you look at it's like a part of the continuum, di ba?
Yeah. There's a follow-up question. What's the mission behind the podcast, RJ? So like what's the idea behind the podcast? Is it just an engine to push Enter PH and Easy Franchise and Mercato? Is
If
it
you watch
is
the
it
podcast, I haven't actually guessed that anybody from Enter PH or podcast or Easy Franchise or Mercato because basically, I was doing a lot of. I mean, I'm a host basically, right? And I have a
Yeah.
show on One News called Bright Ideas. I talk to tech startups. In the height of the pandemic, I was hosting a lot for Go Negosyo, also online speaking to entrepreneurs, and even before that, speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs. So I felt that it's time for me to take control of being able of the content that I wanted and to talk about
Yeah.
and I couldn't have any long form conversations with any of the entrepreneurs there. Eh. So
Mhm.
the show is really if you listen to the RJ Ledesma podcast, it's really a great time to talk to a lot of different entrepreneurs,
Yeah, I
business
agree.
leaders, And you,
I
you, you get to
agree.
understand how they think about business, what are their success secrets, what are their best practices. That's really why I wanted to do that show in the first place.
Yeah,
And I
and
think,
it's a great program. I think people will have a lot of takeaways from it if they spend the time to listen to it. I know that we're not driving and we're not stuck in traffic anymore. No, because that's mostly when people do podcasts.
hmm,
But instead of binging on Netflix, I would encourage that you guys listen to conversations that are like these. I have one personal takeaway, Ibarra, network and net worth. Ang takeaway natin doon, it's time for you and me to host weddings.
I've actually, had several business partners actually come out of me hosting weddings.
Yeah, it's personally for me, and it's not something to brag about. I tell people that in terms of salesmanship and in terms of entrepreneurship, this is what I find my weakness. Because I'm highly introverted by nature. I like to spend my weekends at home with my mom. Like walang labas-labas, walang inuman, no parties. Like so the pandemic actually has no impact on my personal life. Because I like to stay at home. I like to be with my mom on weekends. I like to play with my collection. Like that's what I do. And the networking capability does not come naturally to me. Like I think, thank God, I wasn't born with stage fright. That comes naturally. But the network is not natural to me, and it is a skill that I'm still trying to learn. No,
Mhm.
and these are for me like big. These are for me big takeaways. But for me, my favorite takeaway is still ready, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim,
Fire,
fire.
fire. Exactly, exactly, exactly.
Because it's so true. It's so true. We're out of time. I wish we had like an hour more, but I want to respect everybody's time in the afternoon. RJ, super thank you. This was a really enjoyable afternoon for me. I literally still have like 6 questions on my agenda that we didn't get to. We can pick it up again in another opportunity. But this was
Of course, of course.
terrific. For everybody that sent in their questions, thank you for being part of the conversation. For all of you that are here, thank you for spending another afternoon with us. I hope you join us again in the next conversation. Let's all give as loud as we can virtual round of applause to Mr. RJ Ledesma. This was terrific.
Thanks so much for
Uh,
listening, guys. Again, if you like what I had to say, please do share it online. Do a
right,
screenshot, the tag me on Instagram, Facebook,
right.
Twitter.
Visit the
And
Mercato Central page,
yeah,
and if you want to, I would strongly encourage it. I would say like and subscribe his YouTube channel, and then
yeah.
listen to the podcasts. Again, if you don't take much away from it, at the least you will be thoroughly entertained. You run really tight conversations. I guess hosting, like it really comes from years of experience. They really just sound like somebody having a meaningful conversation with me when I listen to the podcast. They're terrific. I strongly encourage you guys listen to it. For me, one of my mottos in life is learn something new every day. You're gonna learn something new if you listen to it, or at least see things from a different perspective.
Thanks so much.
Uh,
Guys, again, for all those watching right now, I would really appreciate, please support my vendors. It's been a difficult time during the MECQ. So if you can,
mhm.
after we're done with this conversation, go online. You can visit the Mercato Central Facebook page, or you can go to favorites.mercatocentrale.ph or call 77190808 to support our Mercato
Yeah.
United Kitchen vendors. And I promise you, all the food's great. All the food's great. First, all taste tested by
Yeah.
me and my wife.
Ibarra our town hall food, like the food that we send out to guys. Let's take it from there.
Ibarra, there is a vendor called Ibarra's Kitchen in our place. So dapat order ka sa Tokayo.
Awesome. Okay. On a high note, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Again, RJ, thank you very much. And we'll see you again on the next True Logic DX. Cheers.